I'm going to show you one simple trick to make your studio as quiet as possible. Zero noise, zero hum, zero fan noise from your computer box. And it's this easy.
I can't say what's on my mind. I can't say what's on my mind. Too many questions in my mind. Too many questions in my mind.
Do you hear that? Do you hear it? No, you do not hear that, because there's nothing to hear. There's nothing in this room that emits any sound whatsoever, bar the very, very slight hiss from the amplifiers inside my monitors. And that hiss is very, very low. There's also nothing you can really do about that particular sound. I don't know, there's no point doing like a low pass on it or something, because then I think you have to work really hard to even hear the speakers. But you can hear the traffic because the sun's coming up and the traffic's starting. I'm going to show you one simple trick to make your studio as quiet as possible. Zero noise, zero hum, zero fan noise from your computer box. And it's this easy. I have to give credit, I think I'm pointing up to something here. Linus from Tech Tips was the one who first showed me this concept. And ever since I saw it, I was absolutely bewildered. I called a friend of mine who's an IT professional. He told me that the longest you could possibly have a USB cable without direct power going into it, or basically the longest you could possibly have a USB cable, is 15 meters. You can check that out too. So I went online, I looked at everything. 15 meters is the physical longest distance before the USB signal starts to degrade. And it doesn't degrade like an analog signal where it starts to get noisy or less prominent. It just stops because it's digital. So it's on, off. It just goes off. Therefore, any USB cable that's 15 meters can't be connected to another 15 meter USB cable to make it a 30 meter USB. It'll be way, way too long and you will lose the signal completely. What I did was I followed the tips that Linus from Tech Tips put forward. Although he has like this box thing, this breaker box thing. It's like an extension for his LAN, his LAN, which would be the way that he connects his computers, but with LAN cables. And I don't really have that kind of technology, but I did spend $150 to make my studio as quiet as possible. How quiet? Well, there's nothing going on in here. I know for myself, as someone who does occasionally suffer from ADHD, if a horse fly or a big fly comes into this room and buzzes around and bounces off the window a few times, that's my concentration out the window, and it might take me quite a while to get back into the flow of what I was doing here in the studio. And if you remember from my last video, I actually said the more boring your studio is, I'll try to give you a quick look, the more boring it is, the more work you'll get done. I don't know where I got that from, but I did get that bit of advice. Alright. There's my MIDI keyboard that I'm not using. Alright, the more boring your studio is, as someone with ADHD, the more likely you'll be to stay focused. It's that simple. Oops. And that also means use directional lighting. I guess I'm going to do that in a different video where I talk about lighting specifically, but directional lighting has a huge effect on your attention span. So your hearing is also, especially for me, very susceptible to being interfered with by outside noises. They could be anything. It could be spoken words, of course, will be most interference. Even just beeps and cars honking at each other, or dogs barking outside. Anything that's going to distract me from what I'm doing in here could take me away psychologically from my focus. All right, so this is what you need to do if you want your room to be as quiet as possible without any computer noise at all. No rattle, no buzz, no hum, no fan noise. It's this simple. Right, so I bought 2 cables. One cable is a 15-meter USB cable. That cable cost me 80 euros as far as I remember. The reason it cost 80 euros is because it actually has a USB repeater built into the end of the USB cable. Plus, I bought an HDMI cable, and that also has a built-in repeater. That's some sort of circuit chip thing in there, which amplifies the signal that's being sent. Again, I only got 2 cables. They were roughly $80 each, so about about $150, $160 in the end. But it's really awesome because look at this under here. There's no box, there's no nothing, there's no computer whatsoever, and that's pretty awesome. Alright, this red cable is just my mic cable. This is what I'm talking about. This is the USB repeater box that's connected and, well, part of the 15-meter USB cable. This cable, along with this silver HDMI cable. Alright, this one goes into my 11-bank USB hub, which is also powered, so I'm never losing power anywhere along the line. Right, so I got a powered bank of USBs. I got this repeater which is powered also by the USB power, and then all the way up here we've got the HDMI cable, which also has a repeater chip or circuit built into the cable itself. That's why this cable is also about $80. You can spend up to $100 or $120. I think maybe after $150, you're not really getting much more for your buck when it comes to cables. At least these two. HDMI cable, 15 meters long, and a USB cable, 15 meters long. Here, it's really inconspicuous actually. This LAN cable, USB cable, and HDMI cable all go up this kind of snaky thing up into this hole in the roof. And if you saw Linus's video, he went down through the floor into the basement, which is a great idea if you've got a basement, but we don't have one. So I'm going to show you where the PC is, and then you'll get a really good idea of why it's so quiet in here. All right. Hey, kitten. Meow. This is upstairs in the cupboard. I don't know if I can focus on this properly. Alright. I've got it mounted up on a shelf, and this is my PC in all its glory. And these are the noises that it makes. I also have a second monitor up here because when I'm setting up the computer I can check the monitor that the USB or the HDMI cable is working, and then I just switch it over to the other HDMI cable that's going downstairs, and here they go down into the floor. Alright, so I keep the PC off the ground on a shelf so it doesn't get too dusty, and this room itself is a cupboard. There's a fair bit of room in there, so it's not like that room ever gets overheated or anything. It's not a hot room. It's also a room that doesn't have a radiator, so it's a room that never really gets too warm, and it's a room that in the morning the sun would be on, but in the afternoon it isn't. So it's also one of the coolest rooms in the house. So as long as the computer stays up off the ground, cool, dry, there's nothing really that can go wrong with it. You know, and I close this door here and people wouldn't even know where my PC is because it's downstairs, joined by a long ass 15-meter cable. Right, I hope I wasn't too long-winded with that kind of description now. I just wanted to show you that by buying one HDMI cable and one USB cable, then you can separate your PC from the room that you're listening to your music in. You could be doing audio, you could be doing video, but whatever you're doing, you'll always do it better when you can hear clearly through monitors that respond faithfully, and with some soundproofing that also allows the sound to be reproduced as close to what you've recorded as possible, so you're not making mistakes throughout the process of recording your music or editing your video. It might not sound like a big deal, but it's a big deal for me. I'm really happy with this. It was the best $150 I spent, or 160, and now when I sit down in here, it's silent. Every now and again I can hear a car go past, but at night time it's silent. On the weekends it's quite quiet, and I can't do much about the cars right now. I'm going to save up some money. Maybe next year I'd like to get a triple glaze window so it has 3 panes of glass, and then I can still have a window but not be affected by the sound of the traffic. But it's the best I can do. I've soundproofed the walls. I've put up a baffle above my head from the monitoring point. I've moved my desk away from the wall so that it doesn't have reverberation up against the wall from the back of the speakers. I've got my monitoring station 1/3 of the way in from the wall, and I've done everything I can to make this space as neutral as possible while still being functional and not being too distracting. I would love to put pictures all over the walls, you know, like autographs and signed photos. Would love that. Not going to happen. It's going to be the most boring room in the whole house, so I can stay focused on the job at hand and not waste a lot of time being distracted by things left, right and center. Alright, if this has been any help whatsoever, you can show your support by clicking the like button. Leave a comment if you like. I'll respond to it, I promise. Subscribe to the channel because it helps a lot. Of course, you can buy me a coffee, but maybe you'd like to see a few more episodes of this ADHD special, where I try to mix music and people who have ADHD. Like I said, I've only been diagnosed in the last few months. I have not had any medication, and I've been in the music industry for over 20 years with sporadic success. And we'll talk all about that in future videos right here on ADHD in the Mix.